Hello everybody, I'm Mike Fauché. Welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, something I think is very important, and that's data encryption. So I hope you enjoy the video and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, let's talk a little bit about different ways of encrypting your data. And I want to get started with talking about a program called VeraCrypt. It's open source, it's free, and it's an extremely powerful tool, and it's very versatile. So you can use it on basically portable devices, and you can also use it in parts of your system, either to create like a virtual drive, or you can even encrypt an entire partition or an entire drive. But we're going to save that for another time. Today I want to talk specifically about creating like a virtual drive or a volume. So if you look at the program, I'm not going to go through the installation and download of the program. If you just do a quick search for VeraCrypt, you'll find it. And so I'll draw your attention to, once it's installed and you launch it, you'll get an interface that looks something like this. It's not super impressive. It's very basic, but it's extremely powerful. So I'm going to walk you through creating a couple of them, or creating one of them, and then I'll show you the ones that I've actually created so you get an idea of how they can be used and how they can actually benefit you. Looking at this, the very first thing we're going to do is go up to volumes and say create new volume. Now once you get to this screen, you have a few choices, and as we talked about earlier, you have you can encrypt like a container or a volume, or you can do the entire partition of a non-system disk, or you can do an entire drive of a system disk. I would use that very cautiously. A non-system partition or drive can come in handy when you're trying to encrypt, say, like a USB or a flash drive or something like that you actually carry around with you. You can make great use of this program. But for this purpose, we're going to leave it as an encrypted file container. Hit next. We're not going to do it hidden because we actually want to see it. We're going to use it as our everyday data folder. So we'll go and leave it at standard. And here's where we select the file. Now you can put this anywhere you want. I'm just going to leave it on the C drive for now, just for demonstration purposes. I'm just going to call it test. Hit save, and it tells me a little bit about my the location. I'm going to leave the default of never save history. Hit next. And then here's where I'm going to leave the defaults, but here's where you can select the encryption method. And I'm going to hit next. And here's where I'm going to pick the size. So I'm going to pick, just to make it quick, just going to pick a 500 megabyte drive. Hit next. And I'm going to type a password. And I'm going to hit next. Since I'm using a very weak password, it's warning me, so I'm going to go ahead and continue anyway. Now this is the part that's interesting and that you need to know about. First of all, I think I want to make it an NTFS folder. I'm not going to change the cluster size right now. But one of the things you notice is that as you move your mouse around, it changes the actual encryption key. So just making some random movements of the mouse just to actually get it to create a different key or a random key. So when you're comfortable or when you're done, you can just click on format, and it's created the volume. It just takes a few seconds. And we're going to hit next. And that's it. We're done. This repeats. It loops around in case you need to do some more. So now let's actually see how to use it. So if you look at the interface here, you'll see that I have a couple of volumes already created. So I'm going to take that one that we just created and I'm going to assign it to drive F just for the heck of it. So I'm going to click on the letter F, select the file. I'm going to go into the test that we just created, and I'm going to click open, and I'm going to mount. Of course, it's going to ask me for the password, and I'm going to click OK. It takes a couple seconds, and there we go. We now have an F drive, and if you look down here, you'll also see an F drive. Now, the advantage of doing this is a couple-fold. Obviously, you have an encrypted folder, so whatever you drop in there, and this can be used in just like any other folder. Once you decrypt it, well, it stays decrypted until you either shut down, lose power, crash, whatever other means. So that is the only inconvenience is that if something your system does shut down, you will have to relog back in. It may be an inconvenience, but it's also one of the benefits. Let me paint a scenario for you. Let's say that you either lose a laptop, or somebody walks in and takes your NAS unit, or takes your computer, or maybe you send it out for repair, whatever it may be, and all of your critical data is listed on the device. When it shuts down, or when power is lost to it, or a malfunction of any type, that container gets locked, so people cannot get into it until they have unless they have the password. So if you do take your computer out for repair, or it gets stolen, or whatever the situation may be, it provides you a little bit of peace of mind that people can't just get to your data. So obviously, with all the stuff going on nowadays, privacy and data protection has become extremely critical. And of course, I still recommend using cloud services and such, but anything that you store locally is still subject to being physically taken. So having something like this, which is basically free, is an extremely powerful tool that I really recommend you use. We'll get into the next phase of data protection here in just a second, but in closing, I recommend you at least test drive this thing. Again, use it with caution. Start with small volume containers till you get familiar with it, until you understand what it does. Real quick, I want to show you kind of what I have done with it. I've created, if you notice here, I have a private files and I have a backup. Now what I do is I've created these two volumes. You can see them here, the P drive and the Z drive. Now what I do is I've created this on another computer, and what I do is I back up my main system to it, so that becomes my second copy. So by copying, by using Acronis, or by using any other backup tool that you want, such as Always Sync, which is a tool that I use all the time, you can synchronize your data over to that folder, and knowing that if anything happens, it's protected. So again, it's a really versatile tool. Now again, I mentioned when you do boot up, you will have to log into all of these separate folders, so you probably want to be a little bit cautious as to how many you create, just unless you like to log in 10 or 15 times. But in my case, it's I typically log into 2 drives. Obviously, this test folder is not going to stay there, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how easy it is to create. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this section. Let's get on to the next one here. Okay, let's talk about a different option. If you happen to have a NAS unit, especially a QNAP or a Synology of some sort, there's a couple different options you have for encrypting your data. Same reason as we talked about with the VeraCrypt, and that's the ability to protect those containers, folders, partition volumes, whatever you're creating, in the event that they're physically taken. And obviously a NAS unit can be an issue if somebody does get into your house and takes that NAS unit. You want to make sure that data is very protected. So there's a couple different options here. If you recall from my other videos, when you set up your NAS unit, you have a choice of creating one entire RAID array, and within that RAID array you can create volumes. And as you can see here, I have created 3 different volumes, 2 of which are encrypted, 1 of which is not. So when you create the volume, you have the option on any of them to actually encrypt that volume, so that, you know, again, you're going to have to log in when you power up the unit. But it's a tremendous peace of mind knowing that your entire volume that contains, you know, very sensitive information is protected. Okay, so if you're going to actually create a storage volume, you're going to want to create either a new one, or obviously you need to think about this when you're setting up the volumes of your NAS unit. If you've created volumes and you haven't reallocated all your space, you can actually create a new volume here. And when you create the new volume, here it will allow you to step through, and one of the options that you'll have is to create basically encryption. So from there, you'll end up with, I'm not going to walk through this here because I don't have a lot of space left, but if you you'll end up seeing something like this. And so that gives you the entire volume that you created as an encrypted volume. Now, if you've already allocated all your space, you don't have any other way to create a new volume, you're not completely hopeless yet. There's another option you have. So let's talk about that option. So if I go to my shared folders, I'm going to show you a different way. This particular device has all the space allocated. It was actually created as one static volume, so there's no separate volumes in this particular NAS unit. It's just one big gigantic storage pool. However, I can still encrypt one or more folders, and you can see here that a couple of these folders have an encryption lock on it. Now, you can do this to any particular folder that you want. So if I edit the properties on this particular folder, you can see here that I have the option to encrypt this folder. So if I click that and put a password in, it will actually encrypt that entire folder, and not the entire volume and not the entire drive. So this gives me a tremendous amount of power if I need to, or if I would like to create some specific folders that I want to protect, I can still do it. For example, I can create like a top tier folder. I'll call it, Mike's Data. And when I create that folder, so let's go ahead and do that. I'll create a shared folder, and I'm going to say Mike's Data. And I'm going to put it, I'm going to pick I'm going to edit folder encryption. I'm going to select encryption. I'm going to put my password, and that's pretty much all I'm going to do for now. Let me get rid of the recycle bin because I don't really like that, and I'm going to hit create. Yes, I want to continue. It's going to go ahead and process that folder, and you will see now that I have a folder called Mike's Data. It has the lock on it, and again, when I shut down, this will have to be logged in again. I can also close it selectively, so I can lock this now. And you'll see that when I lock it, it has the lock icon closed. So these two are open, this one's closed. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is what you would do when you would normally boot up. So I'm going to go ahead and put my password in. And I'm going to say OK. And it's going to go ahead and unlock that folder. So again, tremendous power and flexibility on various NAS units. It's not just unique to QNAP. They all kind of do that in their own way. So if you do have a NAS unit and you want to protect your data that way, I would highly recommend you look into that as well. So just to recap, you can create encrypted folders on your PC, on your NAS, on a server somewhere, anywhere that that you're storing data, either as primary or secondary copies of your data. You want to make sure that you're storing them to an encrypted folder or volume, just so that if anything happens to them, they get powered off, they get taken away, or they have to be sent for repair, that data won't be messed with. Again, it's a tremendous peace of mind, and I highly recommend that you take advantage of these tools, especially since given that most of these are free. They're either built in directly into your NAS unit, or you can use something like VeraCrypt. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification icon so you can be notified when additional content comes out. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.